Yay. We've got a couple back.
It sometimes takes time to get through government emails, FYI.
Okay.
There's no waiting room and it is recording, so if you guys did want going, you can always
Okay.
send out meeting like today, just in case you missed this section.
That's up to you.
Let's give them a couple of more minutes to see if we can't get most everybody back. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks, Keith.
So Amy, Keith is now our chair and Craig is our vice chair.
Wonderful.
I just see you roll your eyes.
You accomplished a whole lot. Yes, that's wonderful.
Oh. We have Marla and John are both on. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Hi, John. All right, looks like we've got most folks back. For the couple of new folks that have joined. We've just pretty much gotten through the introductions, managed to get chairman and vice chairman established. Yours truly will be the chairman. Craig will be the vice. And we're just moving our way now through the setting up the establishing the committees, the working group committees, if you will. So the last call before we lost everybody was for folks to identify folks who wanted to participate in the Air Force Academy stormwater collaboration. Did you send that invite back to Lewis?
Yes.
He hasn't been able to, oh, there he is. He just joined again. So Amy, you were already named as a participant in that. John, are you going to, as a community, want to participate in the stormwater collaboration?
Not something I anticipated participating in. I know one of our council members, our mayor pro tem, is involved in some of that stuff. So I'll check and circle back to you guys about it.
All right, great. And just for the record, I neglected to mention that Paul and Ann will be the kind of the de facto chair and vice chair of each of the working group committees. Andy had a much better term for it. What was it? Project leads, I guess, and assistant leads. So on each of these separate collaborations, they will be the lead.
Keith, could I ask?
Yes.
I know Marla's on here with HBA. Maybe Marla's not the POC for HBA on all things stormwater, but maybe she could provide somebody that would be involved.
Hi, Marla. Are you guys going to participate?
Great idea, Craig.
Do you have somebody that you'd like to voluntold to be on the committee?
I certainly don't have somebody right now, but I will look for that person and get it over to you guys.
Okay.
All right. You can be the placeholder in the meantime. Long time no see.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you too.
All right. Have we captured from those in attendance all those interested to participate in the stormwater collaboration? You've got them noted. Paul or Ann, I assume.
Fort Carson can
Fort
provide
Carson.
For the subgroups, not maybe the Air Force Academy, but when you look at Cheyenne Mountain and neighboring, we will bring our environmental stormwater in.
Great.
So, I have a question. So, going back to the discussion about broadening the working group scope, that's the question for Paul and Ann. So, the grant, your grant that I understand, as a deliverable of the report for Air Force Academy. Is that correct?
We heard from Lewis, who indicated that it was for certain the intent that we look at it more broadly.
So that goes back to the discussion because you brought it out. What type of deliverable are you doing?
That's a great question.
And so that's a very discrete deliverable to look at the Air Force Academy and surrounding basins far as the stormwater.
Correct.
And I think that should be a focus of the working group. That doesn't mean you can't have sub-working groups to discuss other issues, but if you go broad at the beginning, you'll never get to a deliverable.
One of the expected outcomes in the grant is for the working group to reinvigorate the Monument Creek Watershed Restoration Master Plan, develop a course of supporting actions with area stakeholders in coordination with the City of College Springs and Air Force Academy, and identify opportunities for conducting a watershed corridor planning study to advance projects. Just one bullet out of the expectations I pulled up. There's more. And then there's a, let's see, cross-jurisdictional working group that meets quarterly to discuss stormwater issues, projects, and priorities to improve the resiliency of the U.S. Air Force Academy and fulfill the goals of the Monument Creek Watershed Restoration Master Plan. So that's a little bit broader.
I think your point is well taken, and we don't, no pun intended here, but we don't want to dilute the effort of analyzing and studying the Air Force Academy's issue. However, to the earlier point, it's undeniable that these things are all connected to a point, upstream and downstream.
So I would think that as you keep going, each installation
Oh,
will
yeah.
have a representative.
Yeah.
You're talking the broader issues.
Right.
We can provide those names too. But
I will tell you what my intent was. It was that these others are sitting in and listening in and learning because it's all apropos to what they will be,
absolutely,
what they'll be going through.
because this ties into each municipality's stormwater planning and efforts to for students.
Okay, so I would suggest that we reinforce at every of those meetings that the emphasis is on the pilot project here, if you will, of the Air Force Academy, and that the other participants are there to monitor and contribute as it's all applicable to their issues as they are identified or might be identified. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, very good. Thanks for bringing that up. Amy. Go ahead, Amy. Amy, you've got your hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry. If I can make the recommendation that the Fountain Creek Flood Control and Greenway districts participate. I think they have an advisory role in Monument Creek, and I think they would be a very important participant because they were the author and organizer of the Monument Creek Watershed Restoration Master Plan, which is one of the plans that we still need to work on implementing.
Right. Yes, thank you for that. And I think John Trost has indicated that Fountain would participate as well, if that was your intent.
Yeah, perhaps. So our Mayor Pro Tem Greg Lauer is very involved in the Fountain Creek Watershed District and those types of matters. So it'd be something I can circle back to him about. And there, we have another council member who's getting increasingly involved in those types of issues also. So I just want to run that by them.
Well, I think there's something for everybody up and downstream to learn from the process. To that point, do we want to make sure that Tri-Lakes is represented on that working group as well? Paul, I'm not sure who they'd want to put on it.
So Keith, at the bottom of the other handout, is a list of entities that are sort of anticipated. One of those is the Town of Monument.
Right.
Yeah.
Headwaters Alliance, CWCB, and Center for Environmental Management of Military Lands.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. And our intent was, after this meeting, is go look through other materials and find, and Craig, we had seen that. So we'd be adding others that may not be mentioned now.
Having said that, on this committee and all others, I would suggest we don't want to necessarily get too broad to the extent that we can't get the issue that we were specifically charged with settled or studied. But I think many of these call for a broad collaboration. All right, anybody else? Any alibis, if you will, on the stormwater collaboration? All right, thanks. We'll move on to what's termed JLUS Task 3, which is US Highway 24 and the Peterson Interchange design plan. I will participate in that group likely.
Yep.
You have a representative from both El Paso County Planning as well as Department of Public Works.
We have in the past. Is that
Jennifer's been involved, Jennifer Irvin. Somebody from the
It's
planning side would be good to have.
been mutual, I mean, both sides, because we have active development happening in that area as well as some county projects as well.
I've made note of that, and we will make sure that someone from your team is included for the planning portion.
And we've got some pretty well-established partners there that I think are probably ought to be written in as,
right.
In fact, those discussions might just be folded into this effort.
Yeah, the adjoining landowner, private landowner. On the city's side, obviously, they've been involved. Travis Easton and Gail Sturdivant. I think Gail's been assigned as the project lead from the city's standpoint for delivery of this portion from the design standpoint.
And we'll need somebody from Aoka Peck's team there on the base as well, for sure. And CDOT has to have a representative, county, city, and probably John Lusados from you guys, right?
Yeah.
Is that Danny Mianka that you have as the property owner? Okay.
Yep.
He called me about it again yesterday. So, okay. All right. I think that group is pretty well formed.
They're doing things already informally, and things are moving ahead. Appreciate, just FYI, appreciate the city's efforts to try to find money to get this really moving forward. They put in an earmark request in the federal infrastructure bill. Unfortunately, it sounds like earmarks aren't going to make the cut. It's not finally settled yet, but I think they put in a $16 million request to get, not just through design, which is what our grant pays for, getting us to preliminary design, but they're asking for construction money as well. That's probably not going to make the cut. So we're working some other angles right now to see if we can hunt down some other funding sources to get it through at least full design, which is going to take a little bit more than the 380,000 that we have. We have enough to get to 30% design.
It's supposed to be 30%.
Yeah,
right.
we'd like to get it to final design, but that's going to cost about 10% of the overall project construction cost. Construction cost is probably in the $15 to $16 million range. So we need 1.5 to 1.6 million total. So about another 1.2 to 1.3 million. We think there are some viable sources out there that we'd like to hunt down fairly soon and try to get this to final design quickly in the next year.
Some of that money will come via match efforts as well. Work that's already been done in some cases, work that the city's committed to doing. And
that's a great point, because we'll have to have this working group track their hours on it so we can capture that as in-kind match on the grant for sure.
So I would refer to it as advancing it 30%, because much work has been done, much work is ongoing. This will help facilitate a lot of that future work. All right, I think that's enough said about that interchange design plan. I refer to it as the Peterson Northgate Approach project. The Schriever Air Force Base Energy Resilience Study. I know you guys have met at least once on that already with Schriever, right? So who all has an interest in that?
Right. And I think we have some entities listed in this document, and can you remember, we have Tri-State, and we have
CSU,
Mountain View, and we have Schriever, and what is the Energy Association? See, I gotta find it here. That one I should know. Oh, here it is. The Air Force Office of Energy Assurance.
Right.
So that's who is listed in this document.
Okay. Well, you're going to have Cherokee is going to have to be in there. CSU is going to have a role in what the future might look like potentially. The city, with regard to whoever drives the annexation process, potentially might have some comments worth capturing in there.
That's Peter's group.
Yeah, Peter's group.
And we'll need, and I may be not yet well informed enough, but I believe we'll have some elements of this will be more closed and some will be more open.
Correct.
So, okay.
We're going to be involved too.
Yes.
The planning staff, because probably whatever happens is going to trigger a 1041 permit.
Right. Yep. Okay.
All right. You feel like you have the names captured you need for that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I make a note of it, and we're working on actually having an initial meeting to get this project rolling in early September.
Right.
And at that point, we will also further discuss the working group, what that's going to look like and who would be involved, which will include the discussions we've had here today and the entities that everyone has mentioned.
Right.
Ann and I are already
And
scheduled to do a tour of the facility to get it going just next week.
Okay, good. Who's somebody online?
this is Lewis.
Oh, thanks,
Just a recommendation, best practice that we've seen from other entities doing this type of work is there's usually kind of two approaches: to cast a narrow net and expand your team as you learn that you need more people, or to cast a wide net and then tailor it down to be more specific within your technical working groups. My recommendation would be to cast the net wide in the beginning, bring in as many people as you think may be stakeholders, especially if there's other utilities such as gas, beyond just electric, water, etc. One of the things that the office of I used to refer to them as the other OEA, but since we changed our name, they're now the OEA, the Air Force Office of Energy Assurance, right? Their scope includes all forms of energy, so they'll be a great contributor to the team. But also, again, the gas providers beyond just electric, right? So Mountain View Electric is doing electric, but there's going to be other contributors to the energy aspect as a whole for Schriever. Just throw that out there.
That'd be Black Hills.
Thank you.
Yeah, Black Hills, in the task itself, we have been granted $300,000 to help fund the energy resilience study. So one of our major tasks is to get an RFP out there and hire consultants to do this work. We're not going to be doing it internally. So,
right. So amongst the very first task then is to capture those things that need to go into the RFP.
Correct.
And then to get that out.
Right. Right. And that's where we'll discuss. I mean, does the RFP and the consultants, do they study just the energy, or do they also look at the water and the natural gas? Well, natural gas is energy, but what's our scope?
Well, it's a utilities,
of the RFP?
broad peak utility study, isn't it? Or is it just strictly energy? Do we have the latitude to study the water and wastewater aspects of it as well, Lewis, or is it strictly the electric and gas?
You do have that latitude. I will say, though, initially, to be perfectly transparent, when we initially looked at it, it was kind of thinking more just electricity and gas, but it's not limited to that. And I say that because as the energy resilience program has grown and matured within Old CC, we've recognized just that the scope needs to increase. So one thing to keep in mind is that as you look at the areas that you want to look at, especially with respect to Schriever energy resilience, if you feel like, hey, this area isn't particularly in scope as we initially thought, it's a simple conversation, and we can talk about ways to modify if need be. But generally speaking, yes, you do have the latitude, again, where I say cast that net wide so that you can capture as much as you can in the beginning.
It seems to me it would be an opportunity missed. Water is always an issue in Colorado, Lewis. You're probably familiar with that. And there are some other initiatives, some briefed just this week right here in this room, about water and wastewater kinds of things. I think it would be an opportunity missed if we don't look at it more broadly. Not necessarily have to expand on that whole thing, but there are certainly some unresolved issues there, including the implications of the large development that's proposed just east of, or just north of the base, and what the implications of that might be.
Completely agree.
When you're talking about casting that wide net, the energy resiliency, you're going to need to get in all the stakeholders. If any of that energy was going to Peterson Space Force Base, then they would be interested in bringing energy up and down, or adding their stuff into. So it really just looks at who that utility is supporting, how you're looking at expanding that utility, and then that total energy requirement whether that be water, gas, electric, that's serving the existing populations plus the master plan expansion of those areas. We know how much they're growing. So energy demand is increasing across the board.
It's really kind of a capacity
It's very much a
consideration.
capacity issue. It's whack-a-mole. So you solve Shriver's issue and you're creating a problem for somebody else.
Got it. Okay. All right.
As you guys are discussing, not meaning to interrupt, Paul, but interrupting
Please.
as I do so well sometimes. I think the point of casting the net is important. I would just offer that Colorado Springs Fire would be interested based on potential annexation or growth in perimeter or adjoining, particularly with the water issue. If, but only because of a lot of the energy storage solutions, we and the fire service are finding a lot of issues with that and batteries. And there is a high demand for large volumes of water to deal with those to prevent propagating fires from those units moving. And so I would just say both on the pre-planning aspect of what water is available for just general fire protection as part of an energy issue for the batteries and different energy solutions we're coming up with as well. I think we would be willing to participate. It would likely not be me, but one of my engineering staff to be with that group to at least provide what little bit of input we might be able to.
Great. Excellent. And can we count on you to give up a name in the near future that could sit in on those and we'll get them in the loop? Okay, delegate that. Super. Thank you. Any other discussion on the on Shriver's energy resilience?
And the only other thing that may be impactful is the Colorado Power Pathway, and might that impact one of the potential transmission lines? They might cross. It could have the potential to cross, and what happens when you
number of potential problems with that.
Okay,
I think it's absolutely a topic worth diving into for this committee.
Great.
And that may even invite in the Energy Siting Clearinghouse to the conversation. So, yeah, that's absolutely pertinent to the conversation.
Thank you. Yeah.
Aaron, do you have anything else? You're way too quiet back there. All right, moving on then, the military civilian wildfire mitigation, collaboration, and coordination. I have one question before we go much further on that, is I'd like the chief to let us know what ongoing collaborative efforts exist in that space that we don't necessarily want to be duplicating the effort of, that we might conjoin the conversation, or do we literally need to stand something up?
I think that's an exceptional question. Ashley Whitworth, who is the fire department's wildfire mitigation manager, we collaborate and cooperate with all of the agencies we've talked about. She was just at a meeting up at the zoo, which was discussing more specifically some of the tussock moth issues that remain up there from the kill and the fur. But there was a large number of people involved there too that were, and I was not at the meeting. So please take my comments as being third or fourth party, and they could be an error. But there was some conversation about the fact that everybody has not been able to be cooperating and kind of afraid to because of COVID and the things we've been under. I will offer that, as only I can speak really accurate about, is the Colorado Springs Fire Department. We work with Colorado Springs Utilities, El Paso County, through the Sheriff's Office and their wildland team, the state of Colorado. We are involved in work down at the state park, county parks, Bear Creek Park, for an example. And again, I kind of echo the difficulties really for us have been the United States Forest Service. And I think there are a lot of reasons why that has been somewhat difficult as a barrier. That's not to be disparaging by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a difficult deal. But so we, and then let's talk about the population of the city of Colorado Springs. So Ashley is involved with 142 homeowners associations, not to mention the zoo. We work closely with El Pomar and Anschutz as foundations also. So we are tied, I will say she is tied to about everybody that is touching the city of Colorado Springs boundaries. We've also done a lot of work with USAFA, as I spoke to. We've engaged tremendously with NORAD Cheyenne Mountain on different agreements, and Fort Carson, from emergency response to other things. I think mitigation work down there in the south has been limited to maybe non-existent, not because there is not a relationship. It's just, I think, workload with everybody and trying to figure out a plan for how to do that. I asked Ashley to bring a copy. Can you hand me the CWPP? So we're waiting for one signature, and that's from the state. But currently Brenda, who is our representative of the state, is deployed elsewhere fighting fires right now. And we can't get her signature. But Ashley just finished the Community Wildfire Protection Plan for the city of Colorado Springs, which we try to renew about every 5 years. This shows, if you'll hold up that map. So what we have is this plan identifies areas of opportunity. But again, it's pretty much the city plan, but we identify different partners and adjacencies to the city. So my focus is the fire marshal obviously has to be that of the city of Colorado Springs. But what we understand is all of our adjacencies and our partners and our cooperators are all impacted by something we may create as it burns out, or those things that are outside started burning in. So what we do have is a list of agencies and individuals that we will certainly share and talk cross boundaries. I think what we can do is probably work together to identify a few more to put on that overall list and engage. And you know, when we talk about Colorado Springs utilities, when we talk about the watershed, that goes up almost to Breckenridge. So there are a lot of partners up there as well. That's kind of a reach for some of the things that we're talking about here in some respects. But if that, sir, kind of answers your question, we do have a long list of collaborators, but we're looking to get any more. What we do want to do is try to figure out how outside the city limits we can start doing more work to enrich that buffer and reduce that wildfire risk overall. And so we are interested in that. You know about the mayor and council's push with regard to the Tabor funding. That will open up some opportunities. All depends. I'd like interest rates to rise a little more because the CDs are not yielding that much, but that could be anywhere from $200,000 to maybe $500,000 a year off the interest of that money in the future. Now, and that will be targeted for the stuff we're trying to do in town. But the mayor wanted to make it clear that we want to look for opportunities too, where maybe we could utilize some of that funding, because again, that skirmish line, that buffer outside the city is as important as the work in the city. So other than that, I could talk about wildfire mitigation all day long. And but we, if that answers the question, I think we've got a pretty good list.
I think it starts to get at it, but I bet the county has a thought.
I'm working on a list over here.
Yeah.
Is this task limited to Cheyenne Mountain Space Force Station, or is this all installations? Because
No, this is
the list will grow a lot because you have fire protection districts in all these areas.
Right.
I mean, you have to include Ellicott, even near Schriever. You have to include Highway 115, Hanover, Tri-Lakes Monument. You have to include Cascade, Green Mountain Falls. You have to include Manitou Springs.
Quick interjection.
Probably OEM.
Our region actually does cover Teller and Park County, so almost to Breckenridge. So, and we, I think, just need to really figure out, once we get a working group together, what is our reach going to be? Our board's expressed a lot of interest. There's a lot of money available at the federal level right now for grants we can go after. So we just need to get smart about what's the plan and where are the gaps, and then what's our scope going to be.
I think, Andy, the significance is, you know, if you're talking about land use encroachment and fire implications, when we send referrals out on land use applications, we're not sending it to City of Colorado Springs, we're sending it to the resident fire district.
Yeah.
And because they have authority over that area. And then I would also recommend adding OEM, regional OEM to the conversation as well.
Keep exchanging messages with Jim Reed. We haven't connected yet. So yeah.
I'll send him a nasty text and he'll
Thank
respond.
you. Yes.
Now, we also
have just, is that Darren trying to talk? Is that somebody back there?
That's me. Mike Kozak from Cheyenne Mountain. So I think again that the discussion on funding, I think it'd be central to the working group with the BPXG for looking at how we fund wildfire mitigation throughout the state. And you can use this potentially as a springboard to go back to the state, just like we do with transportation funds. We put together projects and we look at the overall impact the transportation systems, we're not looking at wildland fire mitigation, funding mitigation projects, and identifying the priorities through the region to get after this problem. It's each municipality is doing their own thing. They're all working their piece, but like you said, there's not a coordinated plan necessarily. Because if you, on this side of the fence, you fix your issue, and 50 feet away on the other side of the fence is where your real problem is, and you can't touch it, and you really haven't hit the nail. And I think there's an opportunity here to do that, both with the prairie grasses and the other things, plus the rest of the front range.
Yeah, just to kind of scale it up and build some regional capacity that we don't currently have. So
well, take a more global look at the PPACG to go back to the state and try and push some changes. Absolutely. How we look and fund. Wildland fire mitigation.
Right, and along with that is the critical identification of assets at risk, which we have a tremendous amount in the Pikes Peak region. And so Ashley's done a good job of prioritizing within the city of Colorado Springs our assets at risk and which ones we really want to start trying to tackle first. But I think this group would be instrumental in identifying an overlap of everybody's concerned assets at risk and how we can float those out to address certain things. Because, if we hit a different area, that may reduce what she's targeted with only her ability to control right now within the city. And I think that is a tremendous opportunity for all of us to sit down and identify those as well as the funding sources.
We've done the same thing in China.
Yes, and I think the mission, so the mayor represents National League of Cities on the WIFLC committee, the Wildfire Leadership Council at the national level, which has DOD and FEMA and everybody. So I think the big thing, as you mentioned, is the spirit of cooperation. If we can show the discussions and cooperation among as many partners as possible, provides a much better target of opportunity for major funding sources to continue to come here and funnel down.
Right. And the timing and the speed with which we can do this, the timeliness within which we can do this, there may be some near-term opportunities given these big bills that are floating around in the country presently. I brought that question very specifically to make sure we're focusing on priorities first. We have to establish. I'm glad to see you had a map. That was going to be my second question. Is there a map? You've got a city one, but we're a regional effort, right? The county likely has one. Are you in any sort of regular meeting, you and your peers, in any sort of regular meeting at the county level on this subject?
Ashley, I'll let you take those things as to how you talk with the cooperators.
Is there a scheduled meeting or revolving meeting of any kind?
No, we don't necessarily have like a scheduled meeting monthly or quarterly, but I would say probably like maybe weekly, monthly, we're just going back and forth talking about mitigation projects, what needs to get done and things like that, but no necessarily scheduled meeting.
So safe to say, from what I've heard, there is no regional plan. There may be a county plan, I wouldn't be surprised, but there is no regional plan that pulls these various separate plans together. Is that fair to say on a map? Can you think of can you visualize a map of the region that identifies these hot spots, if you will?
Yeah, we probably a year ago, we tried to establish a group. Jeremy Taylor before me, he tried to establish a group. So we have a map with some of city, Manitou, like city parks, some Air Force stuff. So really just adjacent to the city of Colorado Springs, right. But we don't have anything that extends beyond that. I don't have access to that, but if we can get access to that, we can definitely make a map of that and bring that all together.
Well, we got lots of groups doing great work for. Carson has their own team or teams. I know the Mountain has a team, right? And there are lots and lots of others that I'm probably not aware of. So first things first in this, there are all kinds of funding opportunities. Each area that requires mitigation might also require a separate plan or approach to attack it, right? This is not a situation, a one size fits all situation. So it's wise of us to be smart of all the opportunities out there. But first things first, we have to establish what the scope of this is. And if we got a little more accomplished in the time we have than establishing an organization, outfit, if you will, a meeting, be the convener of a meeting that talks about these things and once and for all gets them plotted or platted, the key targets identified, or high value areas of interest identified. That's an ambitious project in and of itself, which has to be done before you can get to addressing the eaches there. These separate entities are going to have to be responsible for addressing those eaches, and if they require assistance, perhaps a collaborative effort like this can help.
Keith, can I kind of bring us full circle?
Absolutely.
A lot of these discussions aren't going to have as much meaning if you don't get the Forest Service there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we can talk all we want about the fire districts, and
absolutely,
we all know what happens in the forest. Sometimes finds its way into the cities and the various fire districts or fire departments. We have to have the Forest Service there.
I agree. And Mr. Chair, what I would offer is Ashley and her group are more than willing to share what we've done. We've been doing this since 2000. And again, we've had Russia, we've had New Zealand, different countries, even the great country of California has come out to ask how we get done what we get done with a number of people. Sharing the responsibility is our tagline. But I think the fact that we've engaged the number of citizens we have participating the way they are stands to the way they've done the work, and it tends to work. So I would say, for lack of having another standard, trying to replicate, at least in a way, the way her group has fostered some of the priorities and the relationships and helping that as a template, a base template, I think it's been proven successful. And you're exactly right, all of you spoke. What we do works great for the city of Colorado Springs. Doesn't mean it's going to work for Manitou. But I think the basic template and the way we set that up is the way to begin attacking that. And we're more than happy to lay that out as to maybe how we start eating the elephant, as it were, to establish that. And I think we can go faster than we all might be thinking. If we kind of follow what's there, it doesn't mean we can't tweak it and improve upon it and do it better. But I think for a point of departure, following that may be the best way to start, as long as we get everybody at the table.
Ashley, would you be willing to help with that list of contacts? Certainly, you know who your peers are in these outer outlying areas. We can define the region, right? There's probably a map somewhere of your sphere of influence, and we identify the partners in that region and begin a collaboration that hopefully will result in identifying the needs that we have, identifying those problem areas. Certainly, it's going to mean pulling together the various plans that each of these entities almost certainly already have in place. And you can learn best practices from one another and the like. So I would submit that ought to be our initial effort.
I like that. I think there's also, we've been hunting down various grant opportunities that are out there now as we speak that close in a couple of months or so. So we can, I think, work some of this in parallel without getting too far ahead of ourselves. And maybe use this working group as one to kind of bounce ideas off of and scope and so forth. But our board's been asking for that as well. So would suggest we kind of work those together.
Two things from Carson Fossil. So one, development pressure that we're seeing where land in the past that wasn't really concerned for development.
No pressure.
I think that's the right group for that.
Got it.
And two, if you deal with 142 homeowner association,
get combat pay.
Good on you. You also don't want to leave out BLM. Forest Service and BLM are two separate agencies, so you need to find those.
Absolutely.
On your list of entities, are there any nonprofits that should be included in this?
State Land Board.
State Land Board? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Although I don't think they have a separate wildland fire program, to my knowledge, but they certainly own, they're the largest landowner.
Yeah, from a grassland fire standpoint, they're one of the biggest landowners.
How about agencies that actually do mitigation work in the forest, or RIMFI, or Coalition for Upper South Platte? Any of those folks, are they players in this?
I think, let me interject here, sure. I think over the long term, we certainly need to involve these big big stakeholders, if you will. Okay. But first, seems to me, we use the professionals and convene them And let's try to get a grasp on the scope of this issue.
Okay.
Certainly there are large landowners within that area, the state land board first among them. But to invite everybody into that conversation initially seems to me, if they're not a firefighting professional, they don't have responsibility for a certain district or jurisdiction. That's probably not the first conversation I would submit we need to have.
Okay. Thank you.
Agreed, Chief?
Agree.
Is that...
Very much agree, because yes, because there will be an attractive nature for funding and different things that I think initially would tend to bog down the picture. And I think what we do is start small. This is a huge area, right? But if we just get the perimeter that's out there with the stakeholders that Ashley is aware of, when we begin developing a process and a methodology of prioritizing and what we can go for, and then I think we can bring in, as we continue to increase the areas of opportunity.
And I have a question for Lewis. Lewis, since this is military civilian effort and the regional approach is larger than that, would we really kind of be a subset of the overall effort? Or can we go ahead and be involved in the entire regional approach, even if there's not direct military connection to it?
So I think the answer to that question is yes, you can be involved in the regional approach, because just as you know, stormwater doesn't stay in one spot, the same is true for fires and the effects of fires. So I think you're safe in that. And as we were talking, I was going over and looking at the specific tasks in the grant, and basically what the task is talking about is collaboration and cooperation. So everything that's been discussed falls within the scope.
Great. Thank you, Lewis.
Yeah, the fires, you know, they don't respect the fence line, so coming or going. So I think it's important to some extent, at least, and it's going to reach outside of the immediate city boundary for sure. All right. Any other comments, thoughts, suggestions as it pertains to military, civilian, wildfire mitigation, collaboration, and coordination? Very good. And you have everything, Ann and Paul, you need from us in terms of and direction? Do you want to say anything about task 6, Ann?
Task 6,
which is the continuing support.
Yeah, we still have a couple of key items that we're working on regarding task 6, which includes our efforts with Retool COS, which is the revamping of the city zoning code, and we're still pushing for a level of recognition for the Air Force Academy's airfield with you know, an airport overlay. So we're also kind of, I'm not sure where we're at with, and Bill Nichols can probably address this, the master plan update for the airport. We were wrapping our Peterson Space Force Base now sub-area report into that effort with the city airport.
Bill, where are you guys at on that report?
So they've just, it was basically put on hold for a lot of reasons in the last year or so. Funding is now back, and JVation, who's the consultant, has been re-engaged. So things are now moving forward. Specifically, I'm not sure I can answer your question, Ann, about that particular thing, if you will.
That's okay, Bill. It's just, it's nice to know that there is funding available again and that the balls start to roll. So basically what we want to do, the sub-area reports were kind of the last 2 items held out from our previous implementation grant, the first phase. Those have been submitted to Lewis, and we'll do a final closeout of those by the end of September for all the grant deliverables. Once that's done, then we'll have all those online for you guys, but I can certainly provide them ahead of time before it's closed out with the grant. So there are still some things to work out with both sub-area plans as far as continuing work. We covered stormwater, aviation for the academy or airport overlay, and transportation. And some of those, again, with the stormwater and all the lists that we came up of projects and so forth, will continue as part of this effort in phase 2. So that's mainly what task 6 is talking about. And then in addition to that, we're trying to look a little bit broader and have some level of planning effort that's more long-term within PPACG that would address the military needs and help collaboration with all the civilian entities. So Andy can speak a little more on that. That's in the very preliminary stages, but that's kind of what we're looking at down the road.
Okay, thank you.
And the only other thing I want to add is Andy is hiring us an environmental planner, and we get a portion of that person. And is it 20 or 25%?
I forget the exact percentage.
Yeah, something like
I think it can float a little bit, but we've been without an environmental planner now for a couple of months. We desperately need that for a whole variety of things we talked about here, plus air quality issues. So application period closes tomorrow at 5. So if you know of any good ones that are looking for work, send them to our website, take in applications.
Keith, you brought your first meeting in before noon.
I didn't even know we had a deadline.
We did
done better. Could have gone to 1 sometime. All right. Any other alibis on any of these various subjects we've talked about today? All right. Well, thank you for your participation. Ann and Paul have quite a lot of work to do here. We'll be good at generating work for them, if nothing else. And appreciate your participation. I look forward to where this goes in the future. Thank you, Andy and Paul.
Do you have a suggestion on when our next meeting should be? Or you want to think about that?
Well, I'd like to think about it, but I'm inclined to think that initially, at least, we probably ought to meet monthly or every 6 weeks or so until we can get a course set.
Yep.
And you'll hope to have these lists ready to have those separate working group meetings, I would hope, within the next 60 days, 30, 45, 60 days.
We hope to do before that.
Okay.
Do we need the committee's approval to make the invites and start the working groups, or can we just proceed?
Hey, how about a motion to allow them to do what they need to do to make the invites and create their lists?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor? Opposed? There you go, Paul.
Thank you.
Stickler for detail that you are. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Good start.
Yeah.
Well done. Thank you.
Donuts available for your staff.
I notice you're not offering them free. Not sure what's up with that.